Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. I am Hussnain Ali from Bagh School, grade 12 and 13 A-levels chemistry teacher. Today, students, our topic of discussion is second electron affinity. We have gone through the definition and the explanation of the first electron affinity in the previous video. So, for the sake of explanation, let's go through the second electron affinity. Second electron affinity by definition is defined as it is the energy required to add an electron to each ion in 1 mole of gaseous 1 negative anion to produce 1 mole of gaseous 2 negative anion. Here is the general representation of the second electron affinity. Here you can see that X negative gaseous anion is added with an electron to form X2 negative gaseous anion. So, students, this is the general representation of the second electron affinity. For the examination purpose, it is the definition of the second electron affinity that is asked within the paper. So, do remember to learn it by heart. The example of second electron affinity is given at the bottom of the slide. Here, an oxide negative ion is added with an electron to form an oxide 2 negative ion in gaseous state. The second electron affinity is represented here as Ea2 for this reaction, and its amount is positive 844 kilojoule per mole. Students, going through further key points relevant to second electron affinity and third electron affinity, etc. In general, successive electron affinity increases in magnitude. You can see here the Ea1 first electron affinity is less than the second electron affinity, that is Ea2, and Ea2 is less than the third electron affinity, that is Ea3. So there is a successive increase in the magnitude of the electron affinities. You can see by an example of the oxide ion formation. Here the first equation is showing that when O negative gaseous ion is formed from oxygen gaseous atom, the electron affinity is coming out to be exothermic, that is minus 142 kilojoule per mole. Here you can see that the first electron affinity is exothermic. You can go through the previous video and see the concept related to the first electron affinity. While in the case of the second electron affinity, you can see that the value is positive, that is 844 kilojoule per mole. So Ea2, Ea3 are successively positive. What is the reason behind that thing? For the sake of an example, you can see the reason for the second electron affinity to be positive or endothermic is that the second electron affinity of oxygen is positive because the electron is being forced into a small, very electron dense space and experiences a net repulsion from the oxide negative anion. So in the case of the second electron affinity, you are adding an electron to already negative anion which repulses the coming electron. So you have to force the electron to move within the ultimate shell of the O negative ion. This is the same reason why the third electron affinity is also positive, because in the case of third electron affinity, you are adding an electron to already 2 negative charged anion. So a net extreme repulsion is seen. So to counter that repulsion, you have to do work to maintain that electron within the ultimate shell of the negatively charged anion. So students, do remember that the first electron affinity is exothermic, while the second, third, and so on and so forth are positive electron affinities. Students, hopefully you have found this video useful. Thank you for your kind listening. Allah Hafiz.